All of a sudden, things aren't looking great for Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Russian army is making, at best, minimal territorial gains in Ukraine. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that recruitment rates are falling below casualty rates. And over the weekend, Ukrainian drones were able to evade Russia's strongest air defenses and strike targets in and around Moscow. Nonetheless, Putin sounds as committed as ever to his maximalist objectives, which have led to some speculation that he might resort to some sort of escalation in an attempt to restore Russia's manpower advantage, perhaps by dragging Belarus into the war, or by implementing another so-called partial mobilization, akin to the one in September 2022. So in this video, we're going to take a look at what's happening in Ukraine, and whether there's any way for Putin to turn the tide. The next issue of our magazine is out very soon, with this issue focusing on all of the wars that Trump has been involved in during his second term, with each dot on the cover representing a different military intervention or strike. Inside, we run through each of the conflicts, from Venezuela and Iran to Yemen and Ecuador, as well as discussing what he's really doing. Pre-order your copy today at toolong.news. So let's start by taking a look at what's actually happening on the battlefield at the moment. According to a recent analysis by The Economist, using data from the Institute for the Study of War, Russia's rate of advance has been declining basically since the start of the year. And in the past couple of months, Ukraine has actually started making small but sustained territorial gains for the first time since the much anticipated, but ultimately underwhelming, counteroffensive in October 2023. Most of Ukraine's territorial gains have come in the south, where the Ukrainian army has staged a counteroffensive to the east of Zaporizhia city. Specifically, Ukraine has retaken some territory to the north of Hulopol, a town captured by Russia late last year. This is presumably to prevent Russian troops advancing out of Hulopol towards Orikhiv, a strategically significant town that the Russians have been trying to take for the past couple of months, and which could ultimately pave the way for a more ambitious Russian assault on Zaporizhia. So conversely, Russia has focused most of its offensive efforts on Donbass, but failed to make significant gains. Notably, the Russian army has been unable to capitalize on its capture of Pokrovsk. For context, Pokrovsk is roughly 60 kilometers northwest of Donetsk and was the focal point of the conflict last year. At the time, there was some suggestion that its fall might precede a wider collapse in the Ukrainian front lines in Donbass, given its central role as a logistics hub for Ukrainian forces in the east. After months of bloody fighting, Russia finally captured Pokrovsk sometime early this year. But contrary to expectations, this hasn't precipitated a wider collapse along Ukraine's front lines, and Russia has struggled to really advance out of the city. Moreover, the gains that Russia has been able to make have come at a massive cost. Most estimates suggest that Russia's casualty rate is basically the same as it was last year, despite the fact that last year Russia was making steady territorial gains, which just isn't the case today. While casualty figures in Ukraine should always be taken with a large pinch of salt, Bloomberg reported in February that Western officials believe that Russia's casualty rate is outstripping its recruitment rate for the first time since 2022, estimating that Russia is currently losing about 35,000 personnel a month, but only recruiting something like 30,000. This would be consistent with comments made by Dmitry Medvedev, who admitted in March that Russia's recruitment rate was down to 27,000 a month. And a recent analysis by Janis Kluger at SWP Berlin inferred from regional budget data that Russia's recruitment rate has fallen from an average of about 35,000 a month last year to more like 25,000 this year. There have also been a number of reports in recent months suggesting the Kremlin is now focusing on mobilization efforts in Russia's universities in a last-gasp attempt to make up the numbers. In April, a number of outlets reported that Russian universities have been instructed by the Kremlin to ensure at least 2% of their student body sign up for military service. And an independent Russian news outlet claimed that the Russian Defense Ministry was urging universities to offer military contracts to underperforming students instead of having them expelled. And last week, the BBC's Russian service also reported that students recruited via the Kremlin's new campaign for its unmanned systems forces, which the Kremlin announced in January and which has generally been targeted at universities, were being sent to die on the front lines, despite only signing up to be drone operators. Now, it's important not to overstate this. This doesn't mean that the Russian army is about to collapse, and it doesn't mean that Ukraine is taking swathes of territory. The gains and losses on each side are essentially negligible at the moment, and most of Ukraine's territorial gains have been made up in rural areas with limited strategic value. Nonetheless, the general picture is that the Russian army is effectively stuck and can no longer account on an overwhelming manpower advantage to guarantee its further gains. And yet, despite this, it doesn't really look like Putin has given up on his maximalist objectives. While Putin's recent comments about the war coming to an end soon garnered a lot of media attention and led some speculation that Putin might be about to sue for peace, this is a misreading of what Putin actually said. In those comments, the Russian president basically said that he thought the war would end soon because Europe would realize it couldn't inflict a strategic defeat on Russia. And the Kremlin has since reiterated its maximalist demand that Ukraine withdraw from Donbass as a precondition for further negotiations. Moreover, the Financial Times reported last week that Putin apparently still believes that the Russian army can take all of Donbass, despite their evident struggles on the battlefield. This is why there's been growing speculation over the past few months that Putin might be forced into some sort of mobilization. In February, Russia's State Duma passed a suspicious-sounding law making it illegal for Russians to, quote, evade their duty to defend the fatherland. And there are a flurry of reports that the Kremlin was considering an involuntary conscription drive targeted at reservists, with a digital registry already being set up for a potential draft. But while a partial mobilization of this sort might remedy Russia's recruitment problems and help the Russian army make further territorial gains, it would be politically risky. And the last time the Kremlin tried this sort of thing, back in September 2022, it provoked genuine public upset. Perhaps the less risky option for Putin would be for Belarus to get involved in the war. This is something the Ukrainian intelligence have been warning us about for the past couple of months. And last week, the Belarusian president Alexander Lukashenko announced that he would be selectively mobilizing a handful of units in the Belarusian army to, quote, prepare them for war. This would be pretty ideal from Putin's perspective, but Lukashenko has proved a somewhat unreliable ally to Russia in the past, and it's hard to see what he'd get out of it. Ultimately, whatever form it takes, it looks like Putin will need some sort of drastic escalation if he still wants to achieve his maximalist war aims, especially given how secure Ukraine's position currently looks. Now, you're probably looking to learn more about this story and keep up with it as it progresses, and the first place you're probably going to start is online. But in today's world, it feels like 99% of websites demand your email address just to visit the page. So you type in your email to access the site quicker, but unknowingly, you've put your online safety at risk. Your information can now be sold online, and your email inbox is suddenly cluttered with a bunch of spam you never even asked for. Thankfully, we have a solution for you, and that solution is Proton Mail. That's because Proton Mail offers a wide range of features to keep you safe. From advanced phishing protection that flags potential attacks to keep your inbox safe, to blocking invisible email tracking and preventing companies from spying on you just so that they can target you with ads. Proton Mail has it all. They even offer unlimited email aliases to get around those pesky websites that demand your information. They also use end-to-end zero-access encryption, meaning their emails truly stay private, inaccessible to advertisers, trackers, and even Proton itself. This means no ads, no tracking, and no profiling, which feels increasingly uncommon today. Proton also makes switching from your old cluttered inbox incredibly simple, with a migration tool that lets you move everything over in just a few clicks. Or, if you prefer, you can start fresh with a brand new email account and enjoy a clean, organized mailbox from day one. So if you want to take back your privacy, start using Proton Mail for free using our link at proton.me/TLDR, and you'll be one step closer to a fully protected online experience, free from data exploitation.